Hello, Professor McGuire, and the rest of my classmates. My name is Joseph Gonzalez, and today I will be speaking on the judiciary branch of the legislation and some of the many recent Supreme Court cases that have taken place throughout the United States. The judiciary branch of the United States is considered a system of courts where laws are interpreted and applied to the state level. Also, in the judiciary, disputes are resolved in places such as the Supreme Courts or the lower courts. Some recent Supreme Court cases have taken place in which the judiciary has had to become involved and settle many different disputes. One of the cases in which I will describe today is called Sears versus Upton, which was taken to the Georgia Supreme Court. Another interesting Supreme Court case, which I will also talk about today, took place in the year 2010 and was called Magwood versus Culliver. Also, the case of Holland versus Florida I will be describing as well throughout my speech today. The final Supreme Court case I will be discussing today consists of a former couple, Holly Wood and his former girlfriend, which he shot and killed in Alabama. Let's take a look at some of these different cases to see the impact it has had in the local and state levels and in our judiciary branch of legislation. The first case I will be speaking on today is called the Sears versus Upton case. As stated in the United States Death Penalty Online website, on June 29th, the United States Supreme Court returned a death penalty case to the Georgia Supreme Court to reconsider whether the failures of the defendant's lawyers probably affected the sentence he received. Mr. DeMarcus Sears was sentenced to the death penalty in the year 1993 after he was convicted of the murder of a woman in Cobb County. Interestingly enough, when the sentence took place, Sears was not given any adequate investigation of his childhood. Once the investigation took place, many aspects that were previously uncovered came out, such as being severely learning disabled and severely handicapped by the time Sears reached his high school years. After pondering through much of the evidence, the court concluded that the United States Supreme Court held that the evidence might well have helped the jury understand Sears and his horrendous acts. The court granted certiorari, vacated the judgment below, and ordered Georgia to reconsider the possible prejudice to Sears from the ineffective representation rendered by his lawyers, especially in light of other Supreme Court decisions where attorneys failed to conduct a thorough investigation. Another interesting Supreme Court case that took place during a similar time period just a couple of years ago was that of Magwood and Culliver. In this interesting case, Mr. Billy Joe Magwood received the death penalty for killing a sheriff in the state of Alabama in 1979. In the year 1985, Magwood's death sentence was overturned and then quickly placed back upon him the following year. It was not until late, June 24, 2010 to be exact, that Billy Joe Magwood was favored by the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decision allowed Magwood to challenge his second death sentence as a brand new judgment, even if it raised issues that could have been made against the original sentence. The next case in which I will be speaking about is called the case of Holland versus Florida. The case of Holland versus Florida is one in which a death row inmate was given a 1-year statute of limitation, in which Mr. Albert Holland lost because his lawyer failed to make the 1-year deadline, which caused Holland to lose his right to file a federal appeal to his death sentence. According to Washington Post writer Warren Ritchie, in Holland's case, his court-appointed lawyer failed to file Holland's appeal on time and appeared to be unaware of the date on which the appeal's limitation period expired. This happened despite repeated letters and attempted communications by Holland with his lawyer, urging the lawyer to avoid running past the deadline. At one point, the lawyer failed to communicate with Holland for several years, despite letters from Holland pleading the information about his pending appeals. Upon learning this, the United States Supreme Court reversed the initial decision made by the Circuit Court and stated that, but this case before us does not involve, and we are not considering, a garden variety claim of attorney negligence, he said. Rather, the facts of this case present far more serious instances of attorney misconduct. Even a former Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court and co-chairman of the Death Penalty Committee, Gerald Cogan, felt the High Court's decision was the correct one in overturning the low courts. Cogan stated that Mr. Holland should not face the death penalty without the opportunity to exhaust all potentially valid legal claims, and those claims should not be barred due to the gross negligence of his state-appointed attorney. The final Supreme Court case I will discuss today will be that of Mr. Holly Wood and his former girlfriend, who he shot and killed some 19 years ago. Taking place on January 20th of 2010, the United States Supreme Court affirmed the death sentence for Mr. Holly Wood in the shooting of his former girlfriend in the year 1993. One faulty error occurred during the initial phase of this enormous case in which the attorney involved in the penalty of the case failed to investigate and or report Wood's borderline mental retardation illness. Upon review, the federal district courts overturned Wood's death sentence, claiming that there was inadequate performance of an inexperienced lawyer. The United States Supreme Court, however, felt much different and said that Wood's counsel strategically did not pursue the evidence to Wood's mental retardation in efforts to better win the case. As stated in the Death Penalty Information Center website, once again, ultimately, however, the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit Court reversed the district court's grant of relief. To sum it all up, the district courts granted Wood relief from the penalty, claiming a thorough investigation was not undergone. The United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit Court, however, thought differently and kept the death penalty intact for Mr. Holly Wood. As one may well see through the court cases I have just chosen to speak about, the United States Supreme Courts are always hard at work handling different disputes. Some cases that are presented in the Supreme Courts are freshly brewed, and others, such as that of Mr. Holly Wood, have been in the works since the year 1993. Other cases simply come and go within a month's time and then are never discussed again. The judicial branch of the United States plays an enormous role as the dispute solvers in all U.S. Supreme Court cases and lower court cases as well. This branch constantly has an influx of disputes to settle and people to tend to. I hope that the information I learned and relayed today was of much help to you as it was to me. I was extremely interested in the topic of the United States Supreme Court and some of the many cases attached to it. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to my video essay, and I hope you took something beneficial out of it today. Have a great day.